I have travelled the very schemes of the warp to arrive here this day. Traversed the Garden of Nurgle. Been tempted by the excesses of the Dark Prince. Wandered the crystalline labyrinths of Tzeench. And nearly succumbed to the rage of Khorne himself.
How do I keep ending up in these places?
But this... I have no idea what I'm looking at here.
Welcome back, you bunch of bosses, to Tabletop Tactics. You join me, the Demon Lord himself, Mr. Beard.
Demon Lord Beard!
Yes. And the Exalted One.
Yes. I am the exalted one. Exalted one.
Pastry chef of which Chaos God would you be, do you think? Probably Tzeench.
I mean, that kind of is thematic,
Yeah.
isn't it? Yeah. But, you know, I mean, a little bit of each.
A bit of here, a little bit of there.
Yeah,
A little bit of violence, a little bit of sadism.
Column A, column B, column C, and column Y. Ooh. We've got to skip them all because it's chaos.
Hey.
Chaotic.
Daemons, baby. Here we go. Thank you, Games Much, for sending us this illustrious tome. A tome of tomes, because we have the Book of Blood, the Book of Smells, the Book of Magic, the Book of Excess. Can't remember what they're called. But they're all in there.
I think you're pretty much right, apart from the Book of Smells.
Well,
I think it's the Book of Blood, the Book of Change, the Book of Contagion.
scratch and sniff.
Oh.
So on Freeview, you already have another, the battle report, the Codex debut battle report is available right now on Freeview as well. Over on Demand on our website, you can sign up today and you can also access the top combos and units, which we'll be doing in conjunction with this review today. And also, if that wasn't enough, next week there is also going to be a second battle report where the Chaos Demons are fighting the golden magnificence of the Custodes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's that. Head over to On Demand to get all of the extra stuff. And whilst you're here on Freeview, if you have some thoughts about this Chaos Demons Codex, which you probably will have lots, tap it in the comments below. If you like the video, hit like. And if you love what we do, why don't you subscribe? And then you don't have to miss any more videos. Now that's out the way.
You should do that anyway, because
should
it
do
helps
that.
us big time.
It does indeed. Why don't we get into the book?
Yes.
It's quite different to the last one, isn't it?
Just a bit.
Yeah, also, tip-top cover again. The cover artwork is absolutely fantastic. And there is some excellent artwork in this book as normal. I feel like I say that every single video, but
It's true.
the artwork is very good. So this book is very interesting. It is split up, as I alluded to before, into 5 different sections. You've got the Book of Blood for Khorne. You've got the Book of Magic for Tzeench. I think it is the Book of Excess for Slaanesh.
It's Book of Stuff and Wonderment.
Yes.
Is it Book of Magic? I'm sure it's Book of Change.
Book of Change, that would probably make more sense.
The Book of Change.
Change.
Yeah, the Book of Contagion. Yeah. It's right. Now, here's one thing, right, that is very nice. Crusade is at the back.
Hey!
Which is like it always should have been. However, because weirdly, by having your separate sections for like Khorne and the Nurgle and the Slaanesh and them all being separate, yes, Book of Contagion and then Book of Excess. It's nice because it's nice and neat and they're all separated unless you want to go between the two.
Yeah.
And it's a bit annoying.
Yeah, if you're running mixed demons, it's a bit of a chore to go through everything.
Yeah.
But if you are running monofaction and everything is neatly in one place, which is very cool. So you've got your exalted abilities, your strats, warlord traits, powers, etc., and then your units in one little book.
Yeah, if you mono, you'll love it because it's there. You don't need to go. I've got to go through all 85 different Khorne characters to get to the Nurgle characters. It's just that they're there. So yeah, that's a good quality of life change there. Now, it's also worth pointing out that there's no generic stratagems.
No.
They are only stratagems that are available for the gods themselves. However, contrary to other armies, which are, if you have X detachment, you get access to X stratagems, they very, very clearly state that you get the stratagems as long as you have at least one model.
Yes.
In a detachment in your army that has that keyword. So you're not shooting yourself in the foot by taking a mixed detachment. You don't suddenly have no stratagems or abilities or anything like that to use. You will, as long as you have a model, you will get access to the cool stuff.
Yeah.
The only time where a full detachment comes in is for some of the army rules, which we'll touch on in a moment.
Yes.
But otherwise, yeah, that's kind of how it's split. Now, one other thing, and just before we get into the sort of the main bits themselves, it's also worth pointing out that there's no, to take extra relics, it's a bespoke stratagem for each of the gods. There's no way to get extra warlord traits.
No, you have one warlord and that's it.
Which is very thematic for demons.
Yeah.
And speaking of thematic for demons, we'll go on to their detachment abilities, and it already kicks off with some nice thematic stuff, namely the demonic legions. Yes. So what this is basically if you've got a greater demon in your, if your army contains any Legionnaires Demonica detachments, that's what they are now, Legionnaires Demonica, because sure, why not?
Demon legions.
Legions of demons. And it includes any greater demon units, one of them must be your warlord. Unless you have Be'lakor, because then he has to be your warlord.
I mean, of course you're going to take a greater demon.
Yeah.
I mean, who doesn't take a greater demon? Idiots, that's who.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we also have your standard things of troops get OBSEC, but they can't be Nurglings.
Yes.
Nurglings are troops, but they don't get OBSEC.
Bothersome scamps.
They are bothersome. And finally, you have demonic allies, which is basically kind of how traveling players works for Harlequins. You can include a detachment of 25% or less points of your army as a demons detachment, as long as it matches the specific god faction of Chaos. So effectively, Thousand Sons can take 25% of their army as Tzeench demons and only Tzeench demons and not lose Kabbalistic rituals. Nurgle can do the same, but with the Aura of Contagion. World Eaters, when they come out, will get their thing, and it's Emperor's Children, and that's it.
Which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
It's nice to have the option.
Yeah. So the inclusion of Legionnaires, Demonica, Agent of Chaos, Slaanesh units in your army does not prevent Emperor's Children units from your army from using any rules that require every model in your army to have the same keyword. And the following rules apply. Basically, if you have no more than 25% of your armies... Oh, it's power level, forgive me, not points, because we still need to use power level for something in this game.
Does anyone use power levels? Please,
Let us know.
Genuinely quite interested to know in the comments if people do use power level.
Because even the people that I know that play Crusade like religiously, they go, yeah, we play points.
Yeah.
Like, I've not encountered anyone that uses power level other than for stuff like this and stratagems. So yeah, effectively, if you've got no more than 25% of your army's power level, then one Legionnaires Demonica detachment is Agents of Chaos. But because of the way that it's worded, they still have to have the associated keyword.
Yeah.
So you could, in theory, have a Agent of Chaos Slaanesh unit, but only the Khorne units would work for the World Eaters. So you can't get cheeky and start putting in Slaanesh and Tzeench demons into a Plague Marine army.
Good.
That's naughty.
Yes.
Reminds me of 7th edition Elder players who were super thematic with their summoning of Slaanesh demons.
Yes. We know who you are. We have all of your names.
You know,
You're on the list.
you know what you did. So that's kind of the basic detachment rules. And then we get to the datasheet abilities, of which there are some significant changes, which we'll cover in a sec. So the datasheet abilities. There's a couple of obvious things in here, and there's a couple of really big changes. Obvious things are allegiance as a keyword is Khorne, Slaanesh, Nurgle, or Tzeench. Obvs.
That's crazy.
Cool. And then we have demon saves.
Demon saves! Yeah!
So this has been previewed by Warcom already, so we won't go into it in too much detail. It's a super invuln.
Yeah, it can't be modified in any way. You have a characteristic for ranged demonic saves and melee demonic saves, essentially. And it varies between units and factions.
Yeah, so Tzeench they have a better one. As a general rule, your melee invuln is worse than your ranged one because thematically and in the fluff, demons tend to kind of fall apart against physical hitting.
They're quite cowardly in a way.
Well, yeah, because it's all manifestation of like emotions and stuff like that. But this is something that's been gone back, since early days of the fluff, and was really sort of solidified in the Horus Heresy novels, where it's like they were shooting them and just nothing's happening, and then they just go, all right, how about we just like chop off their head with a chainsaw? Oh, this seems to work.
Yeah, this is good.
So let's do that. It's a very interesting rule because in my opinion, it could have just been an invuln.
I kind of like how it is different though, because of the way that they are made.
Yeah.
An invulnerable save is I sort of think of that as like a very, very tough hero type character or model.
Sure.
And they are just very strong. Whereas the demons just literally sort of like go in and out of reality.
Yeah, I suppose it's a good representation of it. A greater demon being able to get a save against a railgun is very nice.
Yeah.
A greater demon being able to get a save against Caldor Drago's Warlord trait of ignoring demonic invulnerability saves doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, we've already FAQ'd that.
That's an FAQ in-house. I can see that being FAQ'd.
Interesting, that sort of came up in the freebie game, which is out right now. So
you may have already seen it.
Yes, maybe.
I don't know.
And we sort of self-FAQ'd that rule because it only affects demons. It was a demon he was fighting, so we were like,
and he is a demon slayer. That's literally the name of the Warlord.
We put 2 and 2 together and came up with 8.
On the blessed number of Khorne.
Bless me.
Ah, very good. That's a very interesting rule. You've then got malefic weapons. So this is basically extra attacks. So these are things like your snapping claws. So Keeper of Secrets, she has 6 attacks with her sword, and then she has malefic 4 on her snapping claws.
Yeah.
This means that she always gets those 4 attacks. They can never be increased. They can never go down. That's kind of it.
And you do sort of see it come up quite a lot. When I was playing the first couple of games with them, it really does make sense in a lot of the model ranges. So things like chariots, where you've got a rider and then like the bladed axle. It kind of makes sense that you've got different weapons for different things. So it does make sense.
So it very, very clearly states, unless otherwise specified, malefic weapons are never affected by effects or abilities that allow models to make additional attacks or abilities that would add to, subtract from, or improve their characteristics in any way. Now, before anyone gets any ideas, that doesn't mean you can ignore transhuman physiology with it, because that's not a subtraction. That's a set thing.
Ignore what?
Oh, forgive me. Transhuman physiology. We then have a couple of rules based around deep striking. And when I say a couple, there's actually 3 different ways that they can deep strike. Manifestation, demonic manifestation. Ooh, I really like this. Basically, everything in the army has demonic. Demonic gives you the demonic invulnerability, manifestation, and also demonic terror. So I'll just do demonic terror quickly. Everything has a 6-inch aura of -1 leadership and -1 combat attrition. It's all right, it's fine, it's quite cute. Where it gets interesting is with manifestation. So because everything has demonic, manifestation gives you 3 options for deep striking. One is your basic deep strike. Bloop, pop down.
Oh yeah.
Hello. The second one is the warp locus keyword. Now, the keen-eyed amongst you may notice that there were certain keywords in the Chaos Space Marine Codex which has warp locus, which didn't do anything. Well, ta-da! Ba-ba! They do something. So what this means is that they can be set up more than 6 inches away from enemy units, provided that they are wholly within 6 of a friendly warp locus.
Ooh!
Now, if you have the same keyword as a warp locus, it must be the same keyword, so you can't have a Khorne locus letting Tzeench demons arrive within 6 because he gets angry at that idea.
But arriving within 6 of an enemy unit is Khorne, and it can be pretty powerful.
Yeah,
you know?
that's quite nice.
Ooh.
And then there's the third aspect of it, which is if your entire army is Legionnaires Demonicus, you don't get to use this if you're allying them in to another Chaos army. You can do a couple of things. You can arrive wholly, as long as you are deep striking wholly within your deployment zone, you can be more than 3 inches away from enemy units. So anyone that wants to get bold and enter your deployment zone is going to have a bad time. In addition, as long as you're arriving in basically no man's land, you can arrive X amount of inches away from every enemy unit equal to their leadership characteristic, to a maximum of 9 and to a minimum of 3. So Custodies, you're going to be arriving 9 inches away. Yeah. Orcs, you're going to be arriving 7 inches away. Sorry, did I say 7? I meant 6, because you're probably in demonic terror range, that -1 leadership. Yeah.
Nice that. It's also very thematic.
Yeah.
You imagine you've got your army
veil is spinning.
has charged into the enemy, which are demons, early game, and then all of a sudden manifestations begin.
There's more demons.
They're surrounded.
Yeah. So yeah, again, sort of average leadership armies, you can arrive very close, or at the very least 6 or 7 inches away, which is quite scary. That makes the charges very reliable from deep strike, which, given that demons are a predominantly melee army, that's very useful.
Yep.
And there's other ways of doing leadership debuffs in the army as well. And then the final thing is the Warp Storm. So you only get this if every model has it. This is your pure army special rule.
Yep.
And again, they've kind of previewed this, but we'll go through the basics of it once again. So what you do is at the start of each battle round, you roll 8d6 because 8, lol, chaos. Yeah. And for each 4+, you gain a Warp Storm point. And you lose all your Warp Storm points at the end of the battle round. And you can use Warp Storm points at various points during the turn, depending on what the ability is to do an ability. You spend those points go away, and then you get a cool roll. So there's a couple of cool ones, like Otherworldly Tread. So use this at the start of either your movement phase or at the start of your charge phase. And until the end of that phase, and that phase only, your entire army ignores all modifiers to move, advance, and charge.
That can be really powerful.
For only 2 Warp Storm points, that's very nice. There's other ones like Descending Shadow, which is used at the start of your opponent's shooting phase. So you can already see they're used at different points. So you don't have to choose this like in the command phase. So you can use these reactively as well. I really like that aspect of it.
Yes.
Because that could have been in your command phase, choose one of these abilities. You go, well, if I don't get first turn, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So it's nice that you've got a bit more reactivity.
And you can adapt to the types of armies that you're facing as well. So
Exactly.
for instance, you've got one called Insidious Whispers. So if you're facing a Psycho heavy army, you can turn that on for 3 command points. Three
It's
Warp
only
Storm
2.
points.
It's only 2.
2 Warp Storm points, forgive me.
Yeah.
And any units within 12 inches of your entire army suffer perils on a double.
Lol.
So if you're facing Grey Knights, 1,000 Suns, or Eldari, that can escalate quite quickly.
Yes, it can get very nasty. So there's some very, very good ones in here. The highest cost one is Dark Invigoration, which is 5 Warp Storm points.
Should be 5 points.
Yes. You use this effect at the start of the morale phase. So the morale phase, so any morale phase. One model in every unit from your army regains D3 lost wounds. If every model in the unit has a wounds characteristic of 1, you just revive D3 models. So your Demonettes, your Bloodletters, and your Horrors. You'll notice I didn't mention Plague Bearers.
No.
But we'll get to reviving Plague Bearers later. That is very powerful because that is an entire army-wide heal of D3 wounds or D3 revives.
Yeah.
So if you go now, the icons don't do auto revives on 1s anymore. That's gone completely.
They do other things.
They do other things. So you kind of need that if you want to bring stuff back to life.
Yeah, reality doesn't blink anymore. Put it that way.
But imagine how terrifying it would be. You've gone, I fired a las cannon at that Bloodthirster, and he's taken a hole in his chest, and then it just goes dun 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 dun
D1000.
dun 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 dun, and you'd be like, oh no.
Yeah. But bear in mind, you will have had to have got at least 5
out
points
of
on
8.
the roll. So.
Yeah. And you can't carry them over. There's 4 rules in this army which allow you to carry them over.
Yeah.
And they're all different for each army.
And there are some rules
for
where you
each
can
faction.
gain them in a turn as well.
But generally they're quite limited.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting mechanic. I'm not sure how I feel about it. And the reason being is because it's Warp Storm. It's chaotic, it's random. I like that aspect of it. I remember the old like 5th edition Chaos Codex where you would roll 2d6 at the start of your shooting phases and you'd get wild things like, yeah, your entire army now has like a 3-up invuln save and you go, wait, what? Or your entire army fails morale instantly and you go, oh, I've lost half my army. Chaos, right? That side of it, not so good. So there's no downsides of this other than if you get a really bad roll. Let's say you come up against Tau. You go, you know what? Descending Shadow, -1 to hit from shooting. And that's -1 to hit. That's not dense cover. That's a flat -1 to hit.
Yep.
Over 12 inches away. Oh, that'd be really nice right now. I got 2 Warp Storm points. Oh, bum.
Yeah. And it's easy enough to get 2 Warp Storm points.
No, yeah.
Good grief.
So those are the generic ones, and then also you get 3 each of Khorne, Nurgle, Tzeench and Slaanesh, but only if you have a detachment of that in your army.
Yeah, so this is one of the downsides, probably, arguably, to taking monofaction, because I think the undivided ones, there's more of them. There's 8 rather than 3.
But they're not necessarily as powerful. They're a bit more niche.
Yeah, you've got more flexibility with them, and they kind of work over multiple phases and turns and whatnot. The faction-specific ones are very thematic. Some of them are better than others, I think.
The Khorne ones are fantastic.
The Khorne ones are very good. The Nurgle ones are a bit meh. Slaanesh is a bit meh, but it does sometimes give you some of the abilities you would expect from the older Codex. Like, for instance, with Slaanesh, you've got lightning speed for 3 awesome points that allow you to advance and charge.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. It's +1 to advance and charge.
Oh, +1 to advance and charge.
Advance and charge is gone for
no
Slaanesh. But all your Slaanesh stuff is just innately faster.
Yeah.
So it swings and roundabouts. You lose this. We'll get to that later. Let's talk about this. So yeah, but there's things like that you compare that, like, oh, +1 advance and charge. That's kind of cool, but because you can't advance and charge, half of it's sort of wasted. Yeah. You then compare that to one of the Khorne ones, which now admittedly it is 4 warp storm points, but +1 attack army wide for all your Khorne units.
Everything
is very good.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a couple of things like that. Tzeench again has a bit of an odd one. Like Deluge of Fire is 4 warp storm points. You get +1 ballistic skill to all your Tzeench units. Well, your flamers don't care. Yeah. Your exalted flamer probably likes that for his anti-tank, and some of your heralds might like that. But your horrors aren't really that good with shooting. Alternatively, you could get +1 to cast
army wide
for 3 warp storm points. Years. Then we compare it to a Slaanesh one, which is whenever an enemy unit within 12 inches of a Slaanesh unit starts an action, roll 2d6. If you beat their leadership, the action fails and they take D3 mortal wounds. Now it's only 2 warp storm points and it's an action, so that could be really game changing, but it's only 2d6, it's greater than, and it's 12 inches. So generally when actions want to be done, things like banners or ancient machineries, if you're playing like, Nephilim missions, they're kind of happening a bit earlier on. And also if you're playing against Necrons with ancient machineries, you just got with the leadership 10, so it's probably not happening, even with the other minuses that you can get in there. So it's kind of fine. One of the Nurgle ones, Wave of Sickness, I think they previewed on Warcom. It's cute. Some of the specific ones are cute, and I think the Warp Storm table as a whole is cute. But I think because it's random, you can't really plan around this. They almost are a nice bonus, which is a bit of a weird feeling for an army special rule. It reminds me very much of Command Protocols. The early version of Command Protocols, where you go, these are really cool if I get them at the right time in the right scenario. They're nowhere near things like Tactical Doctrine, which is just always active. You know when it's going to happen. Or things like Strands of Fate, which you just go, yeah, it's a little bit random, but it's generally always good. Or things like the Martial Qatar, where you go, well, I've got to plan ahead, but the options that I have, I can work with. This you can't really plan with because it's random. Yeah. And the inability to carry the effects over does limit it a bit, because you might go, oh, I rolled 7 Warp Storm dice on turn 1, that's great. And you go, realistically, I'm probably not going to use them all by the end of the battle round, and I can't save them outside of a few special rules. I'm not sure how I feel about it. I like it flavorwise? Flavorly. What do you think about it? Because you've used it. I've been on the holidays in the Warp. Yes. So I've not had a chance to use it yet.
I've not done, so the 2 games I've played so far have all been multi-demons. So I haven't used any of the god-specific ones yet, but generally speaking, I got enough Warp Storm dice on 1 turn to do Dark Invigoration, didn't end up doing it. Descending Shadow, Insidious Whispers, and Otherworldly Tread were the ones that I used most of the time. But at the same time, things like Magnify Glory, when you're increasing your aura range, can be quite helpful. You do sort of need to think for the whole battle round what might happen in terms of rationing your dice a bit, because as soon as you've done one of these abilities, you kind of cancel out some of the other ones because you're only going to have a certain amount left afterwards. So you do need to be quite planful in terms of how you'd like to use them. But they do, because it's army wide, it can make a huge difference. Like if you're running lots of Slaanesh, for instance, in multi-demon world, otherworldly threat's massive because they're so fast, and if you need to make some really important charges, you don't have to worry about things like tanglefoot grenades, which are really annoying.
Or a crater.
A crater, exactly. So it can make a massive difference. So I think, although it is a bit random and can be quite situational, if you use it in the right way, it can be just a nice bonus for the army.
I think it's an interesting one because it's a bit random and some of them are a bit niche, but at the same time, as we kind of said with the super demonic invulnerability and the manifestation rules, those are already very powerful abilities. So to give them more, I think might have been a bit too much. And their basic stats are also quite scary. But first of the books, it is time to call upon the angry one himself.
The Book of Blood.
I was going to say Lawrence.
Oh. The Book of Blood! One of the coolest things with the books is they've got this cool little tarot card for each of them, which maybe you could cut out and use for your own readings.
Now, okay, if they don't use that on the back of the cards themselves in the data card box, I'm going to be so annoyed.
Yeah.
They won't. I know they won't.
We can only hope.
But I can hope.
So, we'll take you through a couple of bits. So obviously the Book of Blood is for Khorne, as you might imagine. And in the book and all of the other books, you have your rules for your exalted greater demons. You have a selection of stratagems, which are quite heavily condensed compared to what you normally expect. You've got warlord traits, you have relics, and then you have your unit data sheets as well. So we'll start off with the exalted rules. So these are now pointed upgrades. You don't think about points on them.
Which is good in a post-Nephilim world.
Yeah, so it's almost like they planned it. So you've got 3 exalted rules, and they cost between 20 and 40 points. As an example, my favourite one is Indomitable Onslaught. You put that onto an exalted Bloodthirster.
Yeah, so these are kind of as they were in Engine War. So these will give you a special ability on a greater demon. Can't put it on a named character. But yes, there's only 3 of them now, not 6. There's no random choosing because you're paying points for it.
So Indomitable Onslaught, as an example, means that your exalted Bloodthirster can't lose any more than 8 wounds in a phase.
Which is very nice.
But it is 40 points. Indeed. It is 40 points, but with a model that has 20 wounds, that is pretty good. So general rule of thumb with your exalted demons is that they are tougher, but they are targetable now.
Yeah, 20 wounds does mean that obscuring is no good for you. Same as dense.
Yes.
So yeah, that's why things like Descending Shadow is really important.
Yeah.
Because against some armies you just go, oh dear, please don't kill my expensive model.
Yeah.
But they are also generally, as you say, tougher and killier as well.
They certainly are.
Now, you mentioned stratagems. Yeah, they are heavily condensed. You're usually talking about 5 or 6 stratagems now. As mentioned, unfortunately, one of those stratagems is for relics.
Yeah.
So Khorne has 6 stratagems, one of which is a relic. So they've got 5 stratagems. Now, they've shown Frenetic Bloodlust off already, which is very good.
Yes.
But the Banner of Blood...
Banner of Blood is excellent. So this is an example of one of the stratagems that you can use to affect your icons. So no longer does reality blink, but they can do certain other things as well. Banner of Blood, so any units that can take a icon, when you do your charge roll, you roll 3d6 and you pick the 2 highest.
Yep. So
which is very nice.
It's similar to the old version, but rather than adding the 3d6 together, it's picking the highest.
Yeah.
But you've also got the ability to arrive closer, and you choose that at, you do it when you charge them?
Selected to charge, yeah.
Yeah, so you can now do that on multiple units throughout the game. It's not a pre-game upgrade. So you can kind of keep that in the bank rather than needing to spend it pre-game.
Yeah, and there's a few different units that you can use the icons with, including the Bloodletters and Juggernauts and things like that. So it's one you can use on lots of different units. I'm going to pick a Warlord trait and a relic that I like.
Yeah, so there's still your 6 Warlord traits. There's still like 6 relics.
Yeah.
As is the way with Warlord traits and relics, some are just better than others.
Yes. So one that's quite good is Devastating Blow, which you can use on your warlords when they make a melee attack, and you ignore any rules where the ignoring wound rules. Hang on. You can't use any rules that allow you to ignore wounds.
Is Abaddon getting you down? Take a Bloodthirster with Devastating Blow and ruin his day because he will die.
He'll die real quick. Yeah, so there's a few models in the 40k universe that do that, like Gazkul and Abaddon.
Yeah.
So there are ways of dealing with him.
Yeah. The Catan, even things like shrugs, like sort of like, oh, you've got your super Flyrant with Catalyst on. Don't care.
Yeah.
No, not today, please.
Yeah, so that's very cool.
Yeah.
In terms of the relics, I also like the Rune of Brass. So the Rune of Brass is a 12-inch aura, and while the enemy psychic unit is within the aura, each time that any doubles are made for your casting, you perils. But it's D6 wounds rather than D3. So it's very exploding.
We do like exploding.
We do like the exploding. Yeah. You like the relic blade.
Yeah. So just going back to the warlord traits as well, it's worth pointing out that the first 3 warlord traits in every table can only be taken by heralds. So they can't take 4, 5, and 6 in the rest of the thing. Those are Greater Demon exclusive, and your named characters have set warlord traits. Perhaps not the strongest, but Aspect of Death is one of the Khorne warlord traits, and this is a way of, again, more stacking auras of leadership. So there's a Warp Storm ability that gives you -1 leadership. Yeah. This gives you a further -1 leadership and -1 combat attrition. So if you're in 6 inches of this guy here, you're -2 leadership, -2 combat attrition.
Yeah, which is mega.
That's pretty scary.
Yeah.
Quite literally.
Yeah.
But yes, my favorite is Argath, the King of Blades.
Ah, the King of Blades.
So, again, this is a sort of setting the scene for some of the other relics. All of the gods have this kind of a relic, which is basically pick one of your weapons. Usually it's almost always a melee weapon. It becomes a relic, you get +1 damage, which is already phenomenal, and you usually get an extra rule on top.
Yeah.
So in this instance, you ignore all modifiers to hit and wound when using that weapon, which is very good when you stick it on an Axe of Khorne. Or a Great Axe of Khorne. Yes.
Combine that with a devastating blow. God blimey. Well, that's them.
Yes.
I'm going to talk quickly about the Bloodthirster in a little bit more detail because I like him a lot. I do like the Bloodthirster. So he moves 12. This is all on his top profile. Weapon skill, ballistic skill 2, strength 8, toughness 8, and 20 wounds, 8 attacks. And he has a 4-up, 4-up with his Demon saves.
The Demons. Yeah, so the 4-up, 4-up is basically that's 4-up against melee, 4-up against shooting. If something was a 5-up, 4-up, it would be a 5-up against melee and a 4-up against shooting. So it's always melee shooting.
Yes, indeed, which I got wrong in one of the games. I apologise. Just for a little bit of the game. He also gives reroll hit rolls of 1 for any Khorne core units, which is as you'd expect.
All of the greater demons give reroll 1s to hit now for core units of their god, obviously.
You've also got the relentless charge rule, carnage rule, sorry. And if you are in engagement range at the end of the fight phase on a 2+, the unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. You can pick one unit.
He just steps on them.
So he has his Hellfire Breath and the Great Axe of Khorne, but you can switch some of these out. So the Hellfire Breath's quite nice. D6 shots at 12 inches, they automatically hit, strength 5, -2, damage 1, it's fine. You can also you can drop the Great Axe of Khorne, and you can take instead of that, you can take an Axe of Khorne and either a Blood Flail or a Lash of Khorne. Lash of Khorne is kind of lame. It's a ranged lash, 6, assault 6, strength 8, -1, damage 2, it's fine.
Yeah, that's all right.
You can take the Blood Flail, which I like quite a lot.
It's so good.
Still 12 inches, you only get 1 attack with it, but you are hitting on 2s.
Yeah.
It's strength 16, because it's ×2 strength. It's -4, and the damage is 3d3. However, the damage spills over. Yeah. So most of the time, if you're doing this into a squad of some description, they're gonna die pretty hard. Yeah. So that if you think about Terminators, any 2 wound models, any single wound horde models,
you're doing an average of 6 damage. On that.
It's really nice.
Yeah.
And it's free. It's a free upgrade. You can take the Lash or the Blood Flail. I take the Blood Flail every single time.
I would go for the Blood Flail. Yes, there's the risk of you rolling a 1 to hit or a 1 to wound, but you're generally, it's 2s and 2s.
Yeah.
It's generally 2s and 2s.
Yeah.
And the output is just so much better.
Yeah, it's really good. The Great Axe of Khorne arguably is a more killy weapon compared to the Axe of Khorne, but if you turn it into a relic, it can still be very, very killy indeed. So yeah, the Bloodthirst had a nice little glow up.
Yeah.
Yes, he's targetable. Yes, he can be dealt with relatively quickly, but if you think about things like there's a stratagem in Khorne where you have a 4-up ignore psychic powers, which can help him out. You do need to invest quite a lot into finish him off, as it were. He doesn't get more angry as he dies, which is a bit sad.
Unlike
Scarbrand. But I think he's a pretty solid choice for an exalted, for a Bloodthirster, especially if you make him an exalted Bloodthirster.
Yeah. And just sort of talking about Greater Demons, and again, just kind of preluding the rest of them. All of the named Greater Demons are still in here, and as a general rule of thumb, they're basically take the Greater Demon, give it +2 wounds, and make it Warp Locus, and then change a few rules around. So Scarbrand is basically, he has a Great Axe of Khorne, but his Great Axe of Khorne ignores invuns with the big profile. Well, because he's slaughter and carnage.
Nice.
He doesn't breathe fire, he just shouts at you for 2d6 shots.
Big shout.
But more importantly, he has the best aura in the game. Rage Embodied.
Oh.
Whilst a unit is within 6 inches. Anything. I don't care what you are. You're next to Scarbrand, you're angry. You get +1 attack, and you auto-pass morale. Sure.
Fight forever.
However, every time you want to fall back, you have to roll 3d6. If it's greater than your leadership, you can't fall back.
Fight forever.
You fight forever. And bear in mind, that's if you're within 6 inches. So if you send a Bloodthirster into a plane and Scarbrand's on the ground below, that plane just goes, I'm so angry! But I get an extra attack. Woo! Yeah, it's the best story in the game because it's hilarious.
It's amazing.
You guys have probably seen like the general stat boosts on Warcom for like the blood letters. Similar principles apply for the characters, like the Blood Master is the Herald of Khorne on foot. The Skull Master is the Herald of Khorne on Juggernaut. The Rend Master is the guy on the chariot. They're all just generally better. Like the extra attack and strength that they previously got for Rageful Assault, whatever it was called, is rolled into their stat line. There's no like, if I roll a 6 to wound, I do +1 damage. It's just basic now. And this is kind of the takeaway with a lot of the demon stuff. It's so much simpler.
Yes.
They're just kind of raw stats in their kind of purest form.
Yeah.
It's
really cool because I think previously the Chaos Demons Codex was a bit like, it put a lot of people off, I think, because it can be quite intimidating, complicated, and also the same way if you're playing them, if you're not very familiar with them, it can be a bit like, what are you doing now? So it's nice. It is nicely simplified, this book.
So you guys would have seen the blood letters, so we won't go over their stats, but again, just as a prelude for the rest of the Codex, the infantry are 10 models, that's it.
Yeah.
They are 10 models. You get your icon, you get your instrument for free. They are built into the points cost, but blood letters, for example, are 130 points for 10. That's it. You can't make them units of 20. You can't make them units of 30. You get 10 blood letters. So this is kind of what I mean about you're not really a horde army anymore. And obviously you've gone from like 8 points to 13 per model.
Yes.
But you've gotten your extra attack and strength built in, you've got your extra damage built in, you've got a better invuln against shooting, you've got a better deep strike, you've got leadership debuff, you don't reality blink anymore. It swings and roundabouts. Now, again, general rule of thumb, stuff is not brave in this book.
No.
Demons are like leadership 7, maybe leadership 8.
Yeah, they're quite akin to orcs.
Yeah.
But again, because you're only you running units of 10, it's not quite as savage as it might be with a horde army. But yeah, you start using models and then morale becomes an issue quite quickly.
And your icons, whilst you've got the icon, it does allow you to ignore combat attrition modifiers. You don't auto-pass combat attrition, you just ignore modifiers. And instruments give you +1 leadership. So even though like your blood letters on the thing on Warcom, it's like leadership 6, 7 on the champ, you're actually leadership 8, which is a reasonable number. It's not bad. Blood Crushers are leadership 9, like they are braver. But yeah, so that's the Book of Blood, and kind of setting up for other stuff. It's almost like I planned it because now we're into the Book of Change. Let's talk flaming birds. of Tzeench and magic and the zaps. Yes, the Book of Change. So again, we're just going to follow the same sort of format here. Exalted, you've gone from 6 to 3 abilities. Architect of Deception, Master Mutator, Nexus of Fate. These are between 20 and 35 points in this instance. My personal favourite is Master Mutator. Ooh. So at the end of the psychic phase, your psychic phase, roll a d6 for every enemy unit that suffered any mortal wounds by this model during that phase, and on a 2+, they take another mortal wound. It's pretty simple. Until you get to the powers and you realise, oh gosh, oh goodness, no, gracious, great balls of flaming warp fire. Yes. Stratagem-wise, these are a bit more esoteric, shall we say, which makes sense because it's Tzeench. Yeah. Khorne, quite simple. There's a few things like you can teleport a herald around instead of making a normal move. You've got ways of doing mortal wounds when your horrors die on a 6, they explode. Like, it's cute, it's fine. I kind of don't really care too much about the strats. Yeah. Like, some of them are really good and you're going to try and use them all the time, but some of them you just go, meh, it's fine. Okay. Like, Minions of Magic, for example. Use this on a horrors core unit in your shooting phase until the end of the phase. Each time a ranged attack is made by a model in that unit, wound rolls of 6 become AP free. Well, that's fine, but you've only got like 20 shots. Yeah. So it's not the best. Yeah. Which is fine. I mean, it's fine. We're not like enormous advocates of strats anyway, so it does feel like there's little special moves for certain units. Yeah. So I'd rather them be like this than I'll do this every turn and it's the best thing that I can ever do. Yes. It makes them the best thing in the game. Yes. You know, so it's fine. Like they're fine. Now, obviously, the psychic powers. One thing I will say, the psychic powers have the best names for their disciplines. The Pandemonica discipline for Tzeench. No, Pandemoniac. Oh, Pandemoniac? Oh, yeah. Yeah. Pandemoniac. Oh, it's sort of like someone that manifests pandemonia. Yeah. He's a pandemoniac. He's a panda. I now, please someone paint a lot of change as a giant flying panda. Fire-spewing panda. There's also a bird. It's now pandemonium. Yeah. So, yeah, there's some... A lot of the powers in here are kind of very reminiscent of what they were. Boon of Change is very similar. Treason of Tzeench now turns off auras. Nice. Which is very good. Yeah. Well, it doesn't turn off auras. It means that a unit that is affected by it can't receive auras, which is probably better because you just go, oh, you've got 5 characters giving auras to that unit there. No, they don't. They're not listing anymore. No, thank you. Then you've got the very powerful stuff like Infernal Gateway. Now, it's not, you can't get the super duper D6 anymore. However, it's now Warp Charge 18. Warp Charge 18? Range of 18, Warp Charge 8. Bear in mind that you've got varying ways to get pluses to cast. The closest enemy unit within 18 inches and visible takes D3 mortal wounds, and every enemy unit within 3 inches of that unit takes D3 mortal wounds as well. Just straight up. Ouch. If you roll it on a 12 or more, they take flat 3. That's rough. So you then combine that with Master Mutator, you're basically doing D3 plus 1 mortal wounds to every... You just go, cool, that unit there, oh, you put all your characters too close to... Pandemonia. Yeah, he's just yeeting pandas at them. And then they sit there because they're really lazy, and they're just like... bamboo. I've been bamboozled. Here's one of the examples of how to keep... Warp Storm points, Gaze of Fate, Warp Charge value 7. If manifested at the end of the battle round, as long as the Psyker is still on the battlefield, you can retain up to 2 unspent Warp Storm points. So it's kind of hard to use to keep those Warp Storm points, but it can be quite powerful because if you've got ways of keeping them and you roll well, you can kind of carry them over, but you still need him to survive until the end of the battle round. Yeah. So, tricky one. We then got Warlord traits. There's a couple of mediocre ones in here. Plus 6-inch range to a psychic powers. Only the first part, so you don't get to do a 9-inch Infernal Gateway. Boom. Yeah. But I'd rather take things like Incorporeal Form, which is -1 to wound all the time. That's also quite nice. Yeah. Yeah. Warp Teller's quite good with the potential issues with morale. They just automatically pass. No, sorry, you can re-roll morale tests within 12 inches of the Warlord. Yeah. And you're also Warp Locus. Yeah. Which is kind of cool. Yeah. Yeah. Right, the relics. Okay. I could take something really cool, like the Endless Grimoire. It's an action that I do at the start of my shooting phase. I can read from the Grimoire, and then it's completed at the start of my next command phase. And I just know an extra power. That's pretty nifty. Alternatively, I can be Abaddon Plus with the Impossible Robe. Once per phase, I can choose to turn the damage of a failed save into 0. Not the first, and not once per turn. Hit me with a Stormbolter? All right. Hit me with a Volcano Cannon?
No.
What's that, every phase? Oh, you then fought me? Nah. Bear in mind that as a Lord of Change, I have a free up invulnerable save against shooting.
That's rank.
I now give him...
You may as well just not shoot it.
I'll give him the -1 to wound as well, so you just really disincentivized it. And this is the problem that I have with certain relics and mortal traits, is you just kind of go, why would I ever not take that on a Lord of Change?
Yeah.
It's wild. It's disgusting. And I can see that being FAQ'd quite, well, maybe not FAQ'd, but certainly balanced data slated.
Yes, I think once
data slapped.
Oh, yeah.
It's just, why is it once per phase? That's so grim. And choosing it is okay. You know what? I don't mind the choosing because that's kind of cool. It's a bit Tzeenchy. But it should be once per turn, not phase.
Yeah.
Every time your opponent shoots. Every time your opponent... Now, bear in mind, yes, your Lord of Change is targetable because of 20 wounds. They're only toughness 7. But they've got a free up in bun against shooting. That's just...
He's not going to take many wounds.
What can you do? Yeah. Like, what can you do against him?
Yeah.
Like, really?
Yeah.
You just kind of have to hope for the best.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's silly, quite frankly.
Yeah. The Lord of Change is a bit of a beast anyway.
Yeah, I mean, he's Tzeench. Tzeench is about kind of shooting, a little bit of combat with certain things, but mainly shooting. Like, he's toughness 7, he's 20 wounds, he's got 3 up in Von against shooting, 5 up in combat. He's only a 12-inch move now, so combat with him is a bit more likely to happen. And obviously, then he's kind of having to cast many of his psychic powers into that combat, but you don't really want to be doing that.
Yeah.
Right? And with most of your powers being like 18 inches, you don't really need to get super close. He gets +2 to cast, or +1 if he's got less than 10 wounds. He's a greater demon. He casts free. He knows free. He denies 2. And he's cheap for what he does. When you buff him up, when you on his own, 300 points, fine. When you give him the Impossible Robe and -1 to wound, sure, you got to spend CP on it, but you're going to.
The scary big birds are back.
Yeah.
Put it that way.
Yeah, they are pretty gnarly. I think they've shown off the horrors. Again, very similar with all your heralds. All heralds give reroll 1s to wound. I'm not sure if we've mentioned that. All heralds do that, much like all greater demons give reroll 1s to hit.
Across all of the gods.
Yeah, and all the heralds will generally have a command phase ability a la Admech, where they go pick 1 unit of core and give them this ability.
Yeah.
So some of them are like 6s to hit auto wound, some of them are +1 to hit, some of them are +1 AP. It depends on the herald. Pretty sure they've shown off the pink horrors, who have better reanimation protocols. Cool.
Poor Necrons.
I mean, Necrons are fine at the moment, to be fair, with the buffs that they've received. They don't, it's just, I would like their buffs to be based around their army rule being better, not because you're taking a special character and the OBSEC dynasty. I'm using it in the league and it bores me. Flamers, however, do not bore me because welcome to Crispy Town.
Oi, oi, oi. Yeah, so the flamers are pretty tasty. So their flamers definitely do flame. So it's a 12-inch range as you'd expect from a flamer, but what you wouldn't expect is that they're D6 +3.
That's a minimum of 4 shots, even if I roll a 1.
You can take them in unit 6.
Okay.
Which is a lot of...
Not 9, but that's Tzeench's magic number.
Well, it's an upside down 9.
Oh, good point.
Which is also quite Tzeenchy.
And it's also because, like, that's for balance reasons, guys, because 9 of these would be horrific.
Yeah. AP 2, damage 1. Yes, damage 1, but that is a lot of shots. And again, when you think about things like Warp Locust and being able to get nice and close, even with a normal Deep Strike, they're going to be in range. Strike. Yes, the Exalted Flamer helps them.
Yeah, it gives them +1 strength. Yep. Their core.
Core blimey! So you can reroll
1s to wound with a herald. An Exalted Flamer is not a herald. No. But you know what heralds are? Psykers. You know what psykers get access to? +1 to wound with ranged attack spell. So you might think, oh, that sounds really nasty. Yeah, it is for 25 points.
Yeah, flamers are pretty good. Pretty good.
I mean, at least they've got a 6-up invuln in. They've only got a 6-up invuln against melee attacks, so you just charge them. You'll be fine. You won't get overwatched or anything like that.
You might get overwatched.
I mean, maybe. They're horrible.
Oh, baby.
Yeah, the advantage is, of course, all the Tzeench stuff generally has a 6-up invuln in combat, which means they kind of crumble quite quickly.
Yes.
But yeah, charging those guys is
not fun.
Not to be recommended. No, let's put it that way. Screamers are still cool. They can do mortal wounds as they fly over stuff. They can teleport instead of advancing.
Yes.
Really good for strategic plays there. And they're pretty decent in melee, but you've got to be careful because they're only weapon skill 4 and they've only got that 6-up invuln. So if they bounce, you could be in a spot of bother. Be careful. But 3 attacks at strength 6 minus 3 damage 2 is not shabby. But we've entered Grandfather's Realm now.
Smelly Town.
Not to be confused with Flavor Town.
The Book of Nurgle is here. So, as you'd expect, exalted traits, stratagems, spells, and warlord traits and relics, like the other books. The exalted Great Unclean ones are pretty good, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Pretty good. So you've got some extra things you can give to them. You've got revoltingly resilient. So the 5-up shrine is gone for Nurgle. No more. No more of that.
But basically everything's got an extra wounds.
Including Plague Bearers.
Yeah, 2 wound Plague Bearers.
Woo!
Toughness 5.
Woo!
Or a human against shooting.
Woo!
And a lot of ways to revive.
Yes! We'll get into those in a bit. So, yes, Revolting Resilient is one that I quite like on the Great Unclaimed because he's already very tough. A toughness 9. Revolting Resilient gives a -1 damage to melee attacks, which is pretty cool. So where demons are a bit more squishy in melee, it's quite nice to be able to give him that, which is very nice indeed.
I must admit, I do like Hideous Visage. It's only 20 points.
Yeah.
And it's another -1 leadership and combat attrition aura. So
an opportunity to stack.
But it's only 20 points, and also it's a Great Unclean one. His base is massive.
Yeah, he's a big boy.
That's a big old range of minus leaderships, which is good for the deep striking.
Yeah. Now, I quite like some of these stratagems for the Nurgle. So you've got Revolting Constitution.
Oh, is it Constitution that's revolting? That sounds like some sort of physiology that's transhuman.
You wouldn't be wrong.
Oh, it sounds correct.
Yes. So you can use that on Plague Bearers, but also you can use that on the drones.
Yep, because they have the Plague Bearer keyword.
Certainly do. You've got...
You could use it on your characters as well. The heralds, because they've all got the Plague Bearer keyword.
Yes!
If you wanted to.
Indeed. You've got Swarming Flies, 2 command points, and you can subtract 1 to hit for Nurgle. So you can do that on anything in this section of the book, which is very cool. You've got Chortling Moraine, which is one of my favourites. This is specifically for Sloppity Boilpiper! Specific one for Sloppity, that's nice! Oh, thank you, Nurgle! So what that is, essentially, is an opportunity for Sloppity. You okay?
I got stuck.
Yeah. This is what happens. When
He's just there and you just go, oh, okay.
You select one enemy unit within 6 inches of Sloppity Boilpiper, and you roll a d6 for each model in the enemy unit. And for each roll that exceeds their toughness, the model suffers a mortal wound. You can only suffer 6 per phase, but the fluff basically tells you that he just laughs you to death.
Yeah, which is great. And you go, oh, that's so funny, I'm dead now.
It's very, very funny indeed. The banner one for this lot is any Nurgle icons that you have when you're selected to fight. To the end of the phase, each time a model makes an attack on a modified wound roll of a 6 does a mortal wound. Up to 6, which is kind of
given that you're not that killy, you've only got like 2 attacks at weapon skill 4 on like your Plague Bearers. It's quite useful for a bit of extra damage.
Yes.
The powers, again, keeping with the theme of awesome discipline names, the Warp Rot Discipline.
Yeah, that's pretty nice. I like Fleshy Abundance. You can give this to a core unit to give them +1 toughness. That's nice for Plague Bearers.
Toughness 6 Plague Bearers, no thank you, please.
Oh, it's nice for Nurgle. You've also got Virulent Blessing, where you can give Nurgle core +1 damage in melee, which is quite nice.
That is nice.
So there are, and you can also give -1 toughness to enemy units with shriveling pox.
Yeah.
Goes off on a 6, which can be pretty tasty against chonky boys.
On the chonkers, yes. Malodorous Paul, however, it is Warp Charge 8. It is a pricey boy.
Yeah.
And it is 18-inch range, visible, but you get to pick. But if it goes off, they can't do actions and they lose OBSEC.
Which is powerful.
It was so powerful.
Very powerful.
Yeah.
Because on top of that, if you take Sloppity Bolepiper, he has that as an ability. So you can pick a unit, so I'm skipping forwards a bit. You can pick a unit within 12 inches of him and it does the same thing. Disease of Mirth.
Is that in the morale phase? Command phase?
It's in the morale phase.
So you can move.
In the morale phase.
Oh, so you can do that in both turns?
Both.
Ooh, that's very cheeky.
So if you're in a clutch situation where you've got like a big unit of something and 1 Plague Bearer left, he's like, no. Which is very, very cool. Warlord traits are quite interesting. I like the Plague Fly Hive. So you, while your enemy units within 6 inches of your Warlords, you should trap one to hit, but you also can't perform any actions.
Yeah, it's only melee attacks, but it's still very good.
Yeah, again, on a Great Unclean one, you just pile up his resilience.
Yeah, massive
It's
base.
crazy. So in terms of the data sheets, I'm quite a big fan of Nurgle. As it goes. Rotigus is the Psychic Great Unclean one, essentially. He does just that. He has 24 wounds, which is 2 more than a normal Great Unclean one, which is quite interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Well,
but...
all of the named ones are slightly.
Oh, he's named, isn't he?
Yeah,
of course.
they're all slightly beefier because they can't get access to the Warlord traits and the relics and the exalted abilities, which is kind of their defensive ability. So that they've made them a bit beefier is kind of my thinking with that.
Yeah. So this one is your Warp Locus. So he's going to be the one that gets all your Plague Bearers very, very close indeed. He's got the Deluge of Nurgle. If you manifest any powers on a 7+, the close enemy unit within 24 inches suffers D3 mortal wounds. I don't know why it's such a long range.
Well, I think the fluff for Rotigus is that when he goes to battle, basically the clouds just rain like filth and vileness.
Yeah.
So like he's just like plodding along, and there's just like clouds of bile like raining down on people.
Well, he does have a weapon called Streams of Brackish Filth, which is pleasant. 12 inches, 2d6, strength 6, -3, damage 1, automatically hitting. I mean, it's pretty cool. Yeah, the Great Unclean one we've covered a little bit already.
Yeah.
He is brilliant. He's really good. Toughness 9 with 22 wounds. He's got a 5-up, 4-up. I don't think there's a way of improving his melee demon save,
No,
as far as I'm aware.
No.
So,
Well, but then if you're worried about the melee, you've got the -1 damage exalted gift.
yeah, so he can still be quite tanky all of the time. So that's nice for him.
James will be happy that for as you'll find out with Sigmar, because he's got the Doomsday Bell, so James can sing "Ring My Bell."
That's nice.
Ring My Bell, which is in your command phase. Select a friendly Plague Bearer's core unit. Return one of the destroyed models, or D3 if it's infantry. Just straight up.
Yeah. Nice that. Very nice. So again, you've got your heralds everywhere. Epidemius is still in here, even though he's got a super old model. He's quite interesting. His tally is very different now, so it doesn't go through the battlegrounds as they were previously. Essentially, while he's on the battlefield, you keep a tally of how many models were destroyed, so similar to before. But instead of the old rules, at the start of each battleground, if there are 7 or more marks in the tally, after making a Warp Storm roll, you gain 1 additional Warp Storm point, which is quite nice.
It's all right.
But then the tally resets to 0, so...
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, I'm not, yeah.
It's okay.
Floppity is very good, though.
Floppity is great!
As we've mentioned, because he can turn off your arms.
Yeah, he's absolute garbage in combat. He's not a unit you want to be doing any... You don't want him to get an engagement range of anything, essentially. But he gives reroll wound rolls a 1, which is very nice. His Jolly Gut Pipes! In your command phase, you can select Great Unclean one, Nurglings, or Plague Bearers, and you can give them +1 move and advance. +1 move or +1 advance and charge, which is
both.
Oh, it is both.
Yeah.
+1 move and +1 advance and charge.
Yeah.
Very good. And the Disease of Mirth already explained. 12 inches, turn off OBSEC, which is just. Horticulus Slimux is in here. That's nice.
Snail boy.
The snail boy. So he's great. He really buffs the beast with Nurgle. He buffs them up real nice.
Nurgle are gross.
Yeah, we'll get on those in a second. So real ones you'd expect, but he's got a really cool rule called Seed the Garden.
Oh, it's great.
So if he is wholly within a terrain piece, until the end of the battle, it's treated as if it was difficult ground. But on top of that, if there's an enemy unit that ends any type of move, excluding Pylons of Consolidation within the terrain feature, on a 2+, they suffer D3 mortal wounds.
It's filled with spore.
Yes!
So you see Alien Covenant? You know, like the spores that go in the ear hole?
Yeah.
That's what happens. But instead of an alien coming out of your back, you get a Nurgling.
Nice, that. Very nice. As we mentioned before, Plague Bearers are now toughness 5 with 2 wounds.
Yep.
Thank you. 4 up invuln against ranged, which is really cool, and then 5 up in melee. Nurglings are hilarious. Tough.
They can't. They're not obsec and they can't be compulsory troops.
No.
So
no, they don't take up slots. So if you want to take 6 units of Plague Bearers, you can still take Nurglings. They've got a constant.
They do take up slots.
Oh, they do?
Yeah, but you can't use them to fill a compulsory slot.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Very good. They've got a built-in -1 to hit. With their bothersome scamps ability,
They can still set up 9 inches away.
they can, yeah. So they're quite good at sort of like a bit of ball control, etc. The Beasts of Nurgle. Oh baby, please! Oh baby, please! So the Beasts of Nurgle, you can take between 1 and 3. They are
80 points, I think.
80 points.
80 points, I think.
They've got they move 6. They got a 4 up weapon skill. They got no range abilities. Strength 6, toughness 6, 7 wounds, 6 attacks, 5 up, 4 up. Their putrid appendages are strength 6, strength user, -2, damage 2. But any hit rolls of a 6 do 2 mortal wounds, and the sequence ends. So if they are all there and they get their 18 attacks,
You're averaging 6 mortal wounds. But that's an average.
you can get more. You can get more. You can get less, but you can get more.
Yeah.
Oh, very
No,
nice.
they're not core, and the only way to buff them in any, because most of the powers are core, most abilities are core, the only way to buff them is with Slimux, because his ability gives them reroll charges and +1 to hit.
Oh, it's
which is a really good
combination.
But that's not all.
No, they've got the Attention Seekers rules. They can heroically intervene 6.
Yeah, just cause.
If you kill them, they do a mortal wound if they explode on a 6, but you got to kill them. And to do so, you need to kill them. Because if you don't kill them in the phase where they've lost any wounds, they just regain all of their wounds.
Yeah.
Woo!
So if you manage to take one of these toughness 6, 7 wound, 4 up invuln beasties down to 1 wound by the end of the shooting phase, actually you did no wounds, he's fully healthy. So he's the Chaos Spawn, but even beefier.
Nice that. Yeah, so not only are they very good in combat, they're also very hard to kill. You do have to allocate a lot of death into these to wipe the unit.
Yeah.
If you don't wipe them, that's a problem.
That's a big old problem.
Big old problem.
Big old problem.
Plague drones you mentioned briefly. Feculent Narmal, last thing to mention. So this now is interactable.
Yeah, you can target it, finally.
Yeah, so still a fortification, but it can be targeted. So it's got 9 wounds, it's toughness 7, it's got 4 up against melee and a 3 up against ranged.
Sure.
For some reason.
I guess.
You can deploy it more than 9 inches away from enemy units when you are deploying it. It's got Shroud of Flies, which is a 6-inch aura, which gives any Nurgle units -1 to hit, including itself.
Yeah, apart from vehicles and monsters, though.
Yes.
It does say, now, it says apart from vehicles and monsters, and you just said it applies to itself. But it's a building, isn't it?
No.
It's a monster?
No.
But it's
just a feculent Narmal.
it just exists.
It is what it is. So
I really wish they'd have just given it, like, keyword, tree.
yeah. Yeah, it's hard to shift. It's hard to shift.
Yeah,
and with the
that's not all.
Yeah, with the buffs it gives, it's really good. So on top of the -1 to hit, you've also got the Plague Bell's Chimes, and in your command phase, you can select 1 friendly Plague Bearer's infantry core unit, which does include the Plague drones.
No, because infantry core.
Infantry.
They're
Oh yeah,
cavalry.
good point.
Yeah.
Good point.
This would be wild otherwise.
And you roll 7d6s, and for each 6, you just return 1 destroyed model with its 4 wounds remaining.
Sure.
They got 2 wounds. They just come back.
Replenish them with the bells.
Back they come. You can only do 1 unit per turn.
Yeah.
But if you're going to run Nurgle, you probably want to take a couple of these.
Yeah, a couple of trees. See them at the front because they're also a warp locus.
Oh.
Sure. You'll park them in the midboard and then turn to all your demons come down very close to it.
Yeah. The other thing it's got is Sickness Blossom. Now this is a bit more situational, but if you've got enemy units within engagement range of it, on a 2 to a 5 they suffer a mortal wound, on a 6 they suffer D3 mortal wounds, but if you do manage to kill any models, you just gain a Warp Storm point, which is really powerful. Models.
Yeah, if any enemy models are destroyed.
Yeah.
You get a Warp Storm point. Yeah,
so you can probably avoid going into engagement range with the tree, but on the off chance that you do finish off a model or you kill a model with 1 wound, just get an extra Warp Storm point, which is really nice.
Yeah, yeah. They're very good.
Trees are good. So that is the book of smells.
Let's do the book of
Love.
perfume smells. The Book of Excess. Yes. So Slaanesh time again. Exalted and strats and all that cool jazz. And there is many jazz to be played, but chances are it's on the dude that's a harp. This is very discordant and horrible jazz mixed with screams.
Nice.
Exalted abilities, diaphanous panoply. Someone will correct me, don't care.
I think it's panoply.
I don't care. It's -1 to wound for shooting as a ranged attack. It is 35 points though.
I mean, I think it's quite good.
It's pretty good though, because you're quite flimsy for a greater demon.
Flim flam.
Yes. Stratagem wise, again, all fairly situational.
I like race through the warp. If you're taking chariots,
your chariots,
you can just zip them away.
Yeah, one of your chariots can, in your command phase, go into strategic reserve for a CP, which is pretty cool. Yeah. I do like Impossible Elegance, which is basically a Slaanesh character in the fight phase, excluding the vehicle ones, is transform physiology but to hit.
Impossible Elegance.
Ooh. So yeah, you'd be hitting that Keeper of Secrets on 4s at best.
Nice that.
You've also got some nice things for going into like expanding your combat with the Endless Dance. When a Demonette's unit is selected to fight, they get 3 inches to pile in and consolidation, which is nice.
Endless.
Yes. You know what isn't nice? These stupid faction-specific stratagems. In the fight phase, when you're fighting an Eldari unit, reroll hits and wounds. Great if you're playing against Eldari. Broken if you're playing against Eldari. Worthless and takes up a stratagem slot which could have been for something cooler.
It's a shame. It is a shame.
Those sorts of things should belong in Crusade.
Yeah.
Leave them out of the normal game. Yep. Because yes, it's fluffy and thematic, and I love fluffy thematic things. But when I've only got 7 stratagems, one of which is a relic,
yeah,
and one of which is a faction-specific one, that means I've only got 6 stratagems to play with.
Yeah. Shame that.
I mean, Khorne only have 5 stratagems to play with, but their ones are like, get to move in your opponent's fight phase. Or extra charges, not, you know, that. But they're fine. Like, as a general rule, I think all the stratagems are fine. And I prefer these stratagems rather than things like, you know, for 1 CP, you can fall back and shoot and also remove half your opponent's army and do this because lol. Yeah. Like, those are the things. The final, the second to final discipline, because you've also got Bellacor's discipline, the Soul Stain discipline. This psychic discipline is probably one of the most expensive out there. Pretty much everything is warp charge 7 or above.
Yeah.
It's warp charge 7 on everything apart from 2 powers, which are warp charge 6. But these are some of the most powerful spells in the game, in my opinion.
Very good. Very good.
So Symphony of Pain. It's warp charge 7. Pick an enemy unit within 18 inches. -1 to hit and wound with melee attacks.
Whoa. Nice that.
Pretty good. Hysterical Frenzy is no longer double attack, but it is +1 attack, and it is exploding 6s, but it's core only, so you can't do that on your Keeper of Secrets anymore.
But there are some really good units you can do that on.
Yeah, like Fiends or Demonettes. Yeah. I really like the combination of Phantasmagoria and Cacophonic Choir. So Phantasmagoria is warp charge 7, an enemy unit within 18 inches visible rolls 66, because Slaanesh. For each 5+, they take a mortal wound and lose a point of leadership for each mortal wound they suffer until your next psychic phase. Now, as we've established, leadership debuffs are quite good with demons because you can deep strike very close. So if you get relatively good on that, next turn, stuff is arriving very, very close.
Yes.
You then combine that with Cacophonic Choir, which is roll 3d6, the closest enemy unit within 18 inches, and visible to the Psyker suffers 1 mortal wound for each point that exceeds their leadership characteristic by to a maximum of 6.
Yeah.
So you go Phantasmagoria, Cacophonic Choir, and then next turn they've already been beaten up quite a bit, and then they get charged by a bunch of very, very close scary demons.
Yes.
Yes. You've still got Delightful Agonies in here. It's a core unit only, but it's a 5-up shrug now, not a 6-up, so happy days at last. On paper, they don't sound very powerful. In combination with the rest of the book, it's very, very good. Warlord traits, on the other hand, there's like one good one, realistically, which is a shame. And it's Quicksilver Duelist. But it is very good. You reroll hit rolls of melee, and you also reroll wounds of melee against characters. That's pretty good. That's very good.
I kind of like Fatal Caress, but I wouldn't choose it over Quicksilver Duelist. Basically, successful wounds of 5+, they ignore invulnerable saves.
Which is good.
Because the damage is quite high on some of the characters you might put it on. But yeah, Quicksilver Duelist is pretty decent.
Yeah. Warp Mists is another interesting one. This is at the end of each battle round, if this Warlord is on the battlefield, you can retain up to 2 unspent Warp Storm points. But as established, you can't take extra Warlord traits.
Yeah.
So you're not taking that over something that makes your Greater Demon killy.
I don't mind the you can't take more than one Warlord trait thing. I think that's when you start comboing like the most powerful things, that's when it just becomes a bit like bleh.
Because otherwise what you would do is you would take that on a Herald that's hiding at the back.
Yeah.
And keep Warp Storm points throughout the game. So yeah, I agree. I don't mind. I think it's just one of those things where you kind of go, is this the start of something? And maybe, I mean, you know what? I would love for a balanced data slate to come out and go, yeah, cool. Or in the next, whatever it's going to be after Nephilim, Nachman 2.0, or Armageddon, or Warzone. There's some really cool war zones in here. Again,
back to Cadia with the number 2.
Yeah. Oh, that reminds me, Cadia fans. Cadia is now a demon world in the Eye of Terror called the Husk of Cadia. So, yeah.
It sucks for them.
Well, yes.
I don't want to be a husk.
No.
I don't want to be a husk.
Bad times. But that's something that I would actually really like to see, is if they went, yeah, cool, you get 1 Warlord. Yeah. You get 1 Warlord trait. None of this, I'll take 5 million Warlord traits.
Yeah, my sergeant is
a Warlord. Right, why do? Like, again, that's a problem for some armies because they really need those Warlord traits, but also it will be easier to balance the game, in theory. Not necessarily. I mean, there's 24 Warlord traits in here, and realistically, 6 of them are good. Oh. Fine. Relics are a mixed bag. There's a couple of interesting ones. There's a couple of meh ones. I very much like the Soul Stealer Blade. It upgrades a Wit Stealer or a Hellforged Sword. +2, -3, damage free. Each time you destroy a enemy model, you regain a wound, and you auto wound against Eldari because it eats their souls. Fine. That's the kind of fluffy thing where I go, you know what? That's okay, because it's fluffy, it's thematic to the weapon, but also the weapon still, the thing still does other stuff against other things. Yeah. Now, if that Thirst for Souls was reroll hits in combat, I'd be like, okay, cool. And against Eldar, it's reroll wounds. I'd be like, I feel bad for Eldar, but I then don't feel bad against you having that ability against other armies. That's, it'd be like the Iron Warriors one, where it's like, oh, they can reroll hits and wounds in combat against Imperial Fist. Now, if it was something like, just, bitter hatred, not just, oh, we hate Iron Imperial Fist, and they can reroll wounds in combat against anything. Yep. And reroll hits against Imperial Fists as well. You wouldn't feel so bad about it existing, but as it is, it takes up space. This one, not so bad. The healing is very, very good because keepers are quite flimsy. There's a few other, like the Mark of Excess is basically the same. +1 attack and an extra 1 each time you kill a character, monster, or vehicle in melee. Fine. Forbidden Gem is now 1 enemy unit within 12 inches of you in your command phase. Not so great. They lose any aura abilities until the start of your next command phase. It's good, but hard to get multiple uses out of because you can't move into position to use it. Yeah. So, fine. The keepers and the units themselves are, again, as you would kind of expect. They've gotten a lot killier.
Yeah.
Here's the weird thing with Slaanesh. They've lost a lot of tricks. They've lost advance and charge. Doesn't really matter because most things are faster. They've lost fight first because that's now a warp storm ability. Fine. But they are a lot killier.
Yeah.
So keepers, despite the 20 wounds, they are only toughness 7. They do have a 5-up, 4-up, but they're -1 to hit all the time.
Yeah.
They're super. They're nippy.
Yeah.
They're swift. The shield, the Shining Aegis, gives you a 4-up in combat now, rather than a 6-up shrug.
Which you'd probably take.
Probably.
most of the time.
I do like the Sinistrous Hand. At the end of the fight phase, if you killed anything other than a vehicle, you just straight up heal D3 wounds. So you could have the Sinistrous Hand, the Soul Stealer Relic, and then do Dark Invigoration and heal 6 plus D. If you kill 6 models, heal 6 plus 2 D3 wounds.
That's nice.
Which is quite funny. The Wit Stealer Sword is still very good. +2, -3, damage free. So 6 attacks at strength 8, -3, damage free. That's pretty good. In addition, each time an enemy model loses any wounds as a result of an attack made with this weapon, until the end of the battle, each time that model makes a melee attack, they are -1 to wound.
Yeah, so cool if you're fighting a character, I guess.
Yeah, if you're fighting a character and you don't quite kill them, you're tougher in return, but
It's fine.
it's fine. The whip is 6 shot, strength 6, -2, damage 2. Cool. Your snapping claws are a malefic weapon, so if you remember way back when we mentioned malefic, they're malefic 4 strength user, so strength 6, -4, damage free. There's no like rending explodes anymore for Slaanesh, they're just better.
Yep.
And the ritual knife is select an enemy model within 3 inches that lost any wounds as a result of an attack made by the bearer, and on a 2+ is 8D from all wounds. Fine, like they're cool. Shalaxi is basically the same, but she has 2 extra wounds. She has a 6-inch heroic intervention, but only if there's a character in range. She's -1 to wound in combat all the time, and the spear is now flat 3 damage, but D3 +3 against characters, just all the time.
Hates them characters.
Yeah, and it's ×2 -4. So yeah, she's and the keeper's a 16-inch move, 14-inch move, 12-inch move. So
very speedy.
Yeah, speedy. And again, that kind of boils down. Another interesting change is the Infernal Enrapturous. Rather than like on a 6 for each model in the unit you revive, you just go, I bring a model back.
Yeah.
Within 6.
Hello.
Yeah. Select 1 model with this ability from your army in your command phase, and a core unit within 6. A model comes back, or D3 if it's infantry, which is nice. She still has the harp playing double perils, which is fun. They've shown off some of the mask abilities. Contorted Epitomes and Fiends no longer stop fallback, which is a big change.
Yeah.
What they generally tend to do now is, I mean, the Contorted Epitome sort of stops fallback, but it's a bit more interesting now. So it's a 6-inch aura. Whilst an enemy unit is within 6 at the start of your opponent's command phase, they have to roll 3d6 for each of those units that are within 6. If it's greater than their leadership, they are half movement and are -1 to hit.
Nice that.
Which is very good, but it's not the I slam into combat and stop you from running away very good. It's just a different kind of very good. Demonettes, I think they've shown off. They're just super quick and killy now.
10-inch move.
Yeah, I don't care if I've lost advance and charge because I'm just fast.
Fastest infantry unit in the game? 10 inches?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah.
Outside of things like Harlequin troops who are 8 inches but can advance and charge, so are potentially faster, but you're just averagely faster. Fiends are still very good. They're very killy, but their Sporific Musk is now an aura. Weirdly, it's an aura that's in engagement range. I guess it's to sort of make it so that it can be turned off by abilities that affect auras. I don't know. They're -1 to hit if you're in engagement range, unless you're vehicle or Titanic. Fine. Seekers, I think they've shown off as well. Hellflayers and the Chariots they're fine. You used a Hellflayer the other day. You said it was quite fun.
Used a couple of Hellflayers, yeah. Yeah, they're good. Again, 14-inch moves are very zippy. They've got a very high rate of attacks. They're not like massively damaging, but when you have that many attacks into a unit, they can bring the pain a bit.
Yeah, and especially a character version because they get damage 2 on their snippy claws.
Yeah.
And yeah, that are the 4 gods. And then we go into the first prince himself.
The Book of the Warp. And the final book in the library of Chaos Demons is the Book of the Shadows, which essentially is all about Be'lakor.
Yeah.
Nice little book for Be'lakor. So in here, there's no stratagems.
Other than the Army of Renown one.
Yes.
Yeah, so the Army of Renown is in here. It's basically the same, just it's been updated to fit with the new rules. So there's no like locus of -1 to hit anymore or anything like that. But otherwise, it's pretty much the same. And I think the discipline is pretty much the same as well.
Believe so, yeah.
Pretty much.
So you've got a few psychic powers. There's no stratagems in here, no warlord traits. The Noctic discipline is quite interesting. I quite like betraying shades because it's cool, because the enemy shadows betray them and they stab them in the back.
Kill yourself.
Which I like. Kill yourself! So 18 inches goes off on a 6. You can select up to 6 models in a unit and add together the unmodified attacks characteristics. So on a unit of witches...
Yep, or Harlequin troops.
That's pretty
or
nuts.
Demonettes, lol.
Yeah. You roll a number
or possessed.
Yeah. You roll a number of d6 equal to the total amount of attacks. And if the psychic test was 11 or more, you add +1 to that dice result. For each dice result, sorry. And on 6 plus suffer a mortal wound up to 6. So if you're targeting this on a unit that is very heavily orientated around melee, you're probably going to do 6 mortal wounds.
Yeah, yeah. But this is what I mean. It's like I think that's identical to what it was.
Yeah.
Like it's cool. It's fun, and I think that's kind of the thing for most of the Noctic disciplines.
Be'lakor himself he's pretty good. He's pretty good. So he moves 12, 2 up for whip skill, this skill, strength 8, toughness 7, 20 wounds, 6 attacks, 4 up with his demonic save. His shadow form, I don't know if this is the exact same as before, but
I think it's different.
Is it different?
I think it's better, yeah.
So you subtract 1 from hit rolls and wound rolls. You cannot re-roll any hit rolls, and you also -1 damage from ranged attacks as well. So he is quite difficult to hit and wound, even more so if you are shooting him. Follows the same pattern that if you are in combat with him, he is a bit easier to kill than if you are doing so with
He's
ranged.
still -1 to hit and wound with a 4 up and no re-rolls to hit.
It's pretty nice.
But he's no longer benefiting from obscuring.
Yeah, can target him because of his 20 wounds. Another way to add to the leadership debuff abilities of this book, his Lord of Torment rule. Within 6 inches, you subtract 1 from leadership and combat attrition, so it can stack up if you're doing multi-faction demons. And then you can reroll hit rolls of any Legiones Demonica units or Disciples of Be'lakor units. You can't include any demon princes in a detachment that has Be'lakor because he's very jealous.
Yeah.
That's kind of him. He's 420 points.
Yeah, he's
probably
very
argue
pricey.
That's a bit too much. With his Blade of Shadows, you can do a sweeping strike, which is essentially 12 attacks, strength 8 if he's not degraded, -3 damage 1, or his piercing strike is 6 attacks if he's not damaged. Strength 12 -4 d3 +3, and he ignores invulnerable saves. So he's a very good elite or character killer, but he's only got 6 attacks. No rerolls available.
And his attacks and strength degrade.
Yeah.
Well, no, to be fair, he does get reroll 1s to hit.
But he is not a disciple of Be'lakor.
No, but he is. It's just any Legionnaires Demonica unit.
Oh, that's a very good point.
Yeah.
And he is one of those.
He is. Yeah, he has like all the keywords. He has all 4 god keywords. He's a warp locus. Like he has all the keywords.
Yes.
But yeah, he's expensive and he's targetable because of the lack of obscuring now. But he is relatively hard to shift. It will depend on your matchup. Yeah, of course it will. He's interesting. I don't know if he's quite as good as he was, mainly because of the obscuring thing. Yeah. Which is a really weird, and because he's like a lot more expensive. Yeah. So
considering his shadow form, you'd expect that the buildings would help, but.
And that is the book. I don't know how I feel about the book, to be honest.
After playing a couple of games, I do like the Demons. I'm yet to do a mono-faction Demons game, but they definitely require quite a lot of thought when you're playing. With the Warp Storm table, you do need to sort of think a few steps ahead in terms of how best to use them, depending on how many dice you've got. The units feel much more robust until you're in combat.
Yeah.
So, for example, a Soul Grinder at toughness 9, all you've got is a 5-up.
I mean, a 5-up isn't terrible.
It's not.
But that's all you've got.
Yeah. That's all you got. And there's generally not really a way to, well, there isn't a way to modify that. That is just what it is.
Yeah.
So sometimes it can feel like your wounds are sort of slipping away because of the invulnerable save. But on the whole, it feels very demonic, for lack of a better word. It sort of feels quite unpredictable. I think if you're facing demons, it can feel a bit like, what is happening here? The potential with the Warp Locust Deep Strike is something I'm going to explore a bit in future games. I haven't really utilized that very much. So in terms of ball control and potential like very short charges, they've got a very unique way of being able to come down close and charge with relative ease, especially things like Khorne of the Banner of Blood. That can be a really straightforward way of getting a whole unit of bloodletters in. Without too much fuss.
It is worth pointing out, I think I neglected to mention it, with the Warp Locust, they have to be on the board at the start of that turn. So you can't deep strike in a Warp Locust and then deep strike stuff closer. They thought about that. Stop. Naughty, naughty. So you've got even with the Warp Locust, you've got to plan ahead. And I like that aspect of an army. I love an army where I have to go, if I'm not playing a turn or two ahead, I mean, not necessarily I'm going to have a bad time, but it's very reminiscent of Genie Seeder cults, where I'm like, if I'm not playing, if it's turn 2 and I'm not actually playing in my head turn 4, and I'm sure that this is how a lot of competitive play works anyway, then my plan might not work. There's other armies which you just go, I point and click and lol, and I lol my way to victory with my skittery, chitinous, 25 mortal wounds in the psychic phase Tyranids.
Yep.
Whereas these guys, the reason why I'm not sure about them is because I look at their points, and their points are expensive. They feel expensive. However, it's a very tricky balancing act because they've got a lot of good rules, and that demonic invulnerability is very powerful. But as we know from things like Harlequins, a 4-up invuln, because that's effectively what it is, and we're going to call it an invuln, even though it's a super invuln, but we're going to call it an invuln because that's what it is, right? When you roll hot, your opponent has the worst time, and you just go, I am so broken. And when you roll badly, you go, I have spent so many points, and everything is dead. And you're going to have a bad time. So it's really hard to balance those rules.
But having said that, so in the 2 games that I've played, one was against Grey Knights, which have a good time against demons because of all the rerolls, and also against a very specific Custodes force, which will be on demand soon, which is Emissaries Imperialis, where they ignore all the modifiers to hit and wound.
You had all these cool modifiers.
So all the Slaanesh and stuff and the Wall of traits you can get, they ignore. And in both games, I didn't really feel like I was getting dominated at any real point. It sort of felt like they were putting up a pretty good fight. So I think if next time I face an army which isn't those 2 things, I think they're actually going to feel quite strong.
Okay.
I don't think they're the most killy army out there, aside from a few units.
I mean, it's melee only, realistically. I mean, the Skull Cannon's rubbish.
The Skull Cannon's pants.
It's so bad. Flamers are very good, but realistically, they're for killing chaff. Now, admittedly, Unit 6 with all the buffs in the world will kill a vehicle. But you're asking a lot to do so. It'll be interesting to know what real dedicated Demons players think of this book, because I think it will probably feel very, very different. You no longer have all the hordes you used to have with Demons. I think there's definite focus on the exalted greater Demons being a real center point of the army. And they feel almost like a knight equivalent now, which is what they always should have been. I am surprised that they didn't make them limited though. Like, because you look at Space Marines, you go, you get 1 captain per detachment. I'm surprised they didn't go, you get 1 greater demon per detachment, because obviously they're not going to share power. But you know what? It's fine because they're all roughly around 300 to 350 points after upgrades. So they are expensive. They are more expensive. They are weirdly more killable because you can't benefit from obscuring.
Unless you're Big Bird.
Well, yeah, I mean, Big Bird don't care. So there's almost that weird incentive to deep strike them now, maybe? Especially with the leadership debuffs. You almost want to send in like a wave of like minus leadership things. Like, I've already gotten, because you can't advance and charge with the Keeper of Secrets, and she's quite flimsy, I'm thinking in my head that probably what I'll do is I'll have like Demonettes and Seekers go up in like a mono Slaanesh army, go up and then be casting like my -1 leadership powers and then going, cool, yeah, your leadership like 4 or 5 now. Keeper, lol. You know, so it's an interesting one. This is why I think a mono works, because the specific the mono doesn't work, because you want extra abilities from the other factions to kind of make it a cohesive whole. Yeah. Will you see mixed detachments, or will people take a CP hit to have like the extra warp storm points? I think that's what people are going to experiment with. I think the stratagems aren't powerful enough to really have that be too much of a negative. I think having a battalion of patrol or a couple of patrols or whatever will be quite a popular way to run them. I think I can certainly see Tzeench and Nurgle doing the rounds, because you've then got, they're so hard to shift at range, and you've got a wall of meat, so you can't get to the squishy stuff that's holding your back line. Yeah. And if you think about it as well, if you've got a unit of like, you know, even just like, here's like 4 or 5 flamers and just plague bearers surrounding them. Yeah. What are you going to do? You're going to shoot those screamers with their free up in bun? Okay. Good luck, I suppose. Yeah, they're an interesting one. I'm not sure how I feel about them. I definitely need to get some games in with them. Yeah. They are very, I think more than any other codex, they are so drastically different to what they were. Like, you look at things like Custodies and you go, well, yeah, I mean, they're basically the same, just better. You look at Orcs, they're just Orcs. You look at the AdMech and it's like, well, they took the AdMech stuff and just made them better. Demons have basically just gone, look at the old codex, get rid of it. Yeah. This is your new world now. Yeah. So I think it's going to be actually quite a steep learning curve for old time Demons players. So it's interesting times. Yeah. Interesting times ahead. I'm looking forward to getting some games in. Yeah. They are fun. I will say that. They are definitely fun to play. Deep Striking and Exalted Bloodthirster is the best. I mean, it's just like a fireball falling down from the sky. It always was. So yeah, cool. That is that. I am holding out my judgment on this book, which is a rarity for me, because normally I know exactly the feel of a book straight away. But I think it's because it's so totally different, I'm not 100%. But I'm looking forward to using it, and I think it's going to be an enjoyable army to play. But I think against some armies they're going to be quite oppressive. Yeah, but we'll see. We'll see. Who knows? Any final thoughts from you, Mr. Beard? Sorry, Chaos Lord Beard. Oh, Demon Lord Beard. I think you'll enjoy your games. Okay. The couple I've played so far have been fun. I'm quite excited to try the mono faction with Nurgle and Slaanesh after having done a couple of games with the multi-ball. Yeah, I do like them. As Chaos goes, they're okay with me. And one day we will have a Tzeench army. One day. We've only been asking for the past several years. Yeah. Maybe one day. But until that day comes, I have been the Exalted One pastry chef. He has been the Chaos Lord Beard. We hope you have enjoyed this. If you have done, leave us a like, a comment, and subscribe below if you have not done so already. And thank you for sticking with us this long. We cannot do it without your help and your love and your hobby assistance, for you are bosses. And we will see you next time. So take care for now. Bye!